reaction now on the latest of those figures. Labour consultant Tony Healy joins us now virtually to discuss this with us. Mr. Healy, thank you very much for your time. I don't know, maybe I'm a despondent South African. I expected the numbers to actually increase. I know they're still quite high, still very disappointing, 34, over 34%, almost 35. But did you expect a decrease, especially looking at usually in December, there's, those companies that would hire people on contracts, right?
Yes, good afternoon, Ms. Eho. Yes, I agree with you. I think we have every reason to be despondent. We see the stats coming out quarterly, and over time it's 0.25% up, 0.5% down, 0.5% up. We've been hovering around this mid 30% unemployment level for a very long time. If you look at this historically, I think in fairness to government, they inherited in 1994 an unemployment rate that was just on 30%. But here we are 20 odd years later with the unemployment rate stubbornly high. And it's the worst in the world. And our peers are the West Bank, Gaza Strip, Djibouti, and Equatorial Guinea. So it really is a national crisis, and we're not seeing the necessary response to try and facilitate job creation.
Can you help me make sense of it? What can we attribute the decrease to?
Well, I think there's a number of factors, and you've already alluded to, and Anita also alluded to some of them. So, for example, we don't have a stable electricity power grid, and we have all the power outages. So that's very important. Our road infrastructure, our rail infrastructure, I mean, if you take coal mining, we transport most of our coal from coal mines to power stations by truck, by vehicle, not by rail, which is the most cost-efficient way of doing it. And it's the way in most other parts of the world that coal is transported. Security issues are obviously very, very important. Policy certainty is important. I mean, we've seen recently in the Sibanye ways dispute talk potentially of Sibanye losing their mining license because of their approach to the collective bargaining process. And you just can't have government interfering in ways like that. So that spooks investors who want to, who look at investing locally. And maybe finally and importantly, it's not the only factor, but I think it is a factor, we have a fairly highly regulated labour market. Now, that may have been fit for purpose in the mid-90s, but when we're sitting where we are now, nearly 30 years later, with a stubbornly high unemployment rate, then maybe our highly regulated labour market is not as fit for purpose now as it was when it was first really spawned almost 30 years ago.
And obviously this doesn't mean that we need to celebrate just because it decreased. It's still quite a high number. But I want to speak to you, Mr. Healy, about the 350 Rand grant, that was supposed to assist during the time that we were locked down because of how many people lost their jobs during that hard lockdown, right? But now that prices, everything is going up, there's food, electricity, tariffs are going up in July, that 350 Rand, the value also decreases, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And look, I think Treasury has many demands on it. There are many justifiable ways of expending public funds. I mean, you can look at education, you can look at security, you can look at infrastructure, and then many areas in addition to the social security grant. But if you look at it in isolation, then it's not going to go very far. But again, we have an astoundingly large number of people who actually qualify for that grant, which is also a challenge.
And in terms of youth unemployment, I mean, this is something we literally discuss every single time the statistics are released, and it's 4 times a year. And it just keeps getting worse. I mean, what are the solutions? It doesn't even look like there's anything in terms of government policy that is, that is being implemented to assist with this. Is government even taking it seriously?
Yeah, it's alarming, and it's of course alarming for that age group. But generally speaking, our unemployment statistics have been alarming for many years. And for me, the problem is they don't appear to be taken seriously enough. It really is a national disaster. And the more we see unemployment, the more we see inequality, the greater potential for civil unrest, the greater potential for poverty. So we would expect there to be far more effort from government in order to enable that which is necessary to ensure direct foreign investment, because you grow your way out of an unemployment crisis like this. And we just don't have the dynamics and the infrastructure for that to happen. And we're not seeing any moves. And really, it's almost questionable whether government has the capacity to deal with these issues, because they haven't been able to do so for almost 30 years.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Mr. Healy. I mean, the President did say during his State of the Nation address that it's the private sector that is supposed to create jobs, but also it's government's job to make it easy for the private sector to be able to do that. And with the energy crisis that we're going through and everything else looking bleak in our country, I wonder if that will actually happen. That was Tony Healy. He is a Labour consultant.